The Vikings were not born from the sea. They were born from darkness. You think the Vikings were terrifying because they had axes, because they had longships, because they came out of the fog, burned villages, raided monasteries, and made all of Europe tremble. But the truth is much stranger. Before the Vikings made the world afraid, they grew up inside fear. Not the fear of war, not the fear of death, but something much simpler: darkness. In the far north, winter was not like the winter you know. The sun did not disappear for just a few hours. It vanished as if the whole world had been swallowed. The days grew shorter, the nights grew longer, snow covered the ground, wind screamed through the cracks in the wood. The cold cut into human skin like a knife. And for many months, Viking life shrank down to one small circle around the fire. Inside the longhouse there was smoke, the smell of damp wool, the smell of animals, the smell of people, the smell of dried food, children crying, old people coughing, wood cracking in the fire. And outside? Outside was a thick blackness, a darkness the human eye could not pierce. And when people stared into darkness for too long, they began to see things that were not real, or at least they thought they were not real. The Vikings believed the sun was being hunted. To you, an eclipse is just an astronomical event, but to the Vikings, it could be a sign of the end of the world. They believed that two giant wolves ran across the sky. One chased the sun, one chased the moon. Every day the sun crossed the sky not because it was peaceful, but because it was running away. And one day the wolf would catch it. It would open its jaws, swallow the sun, and when the light disappeared forever, Ragnarok would begin. The end of the gods, the end of mankind, the end of every fire that had ever burned in the night. Imagine you are a Viking child. You are sitting inside a dark longhouse. Outside, the wind is howling. Snow lies heavy on the roof. The adults tell you that one day the sun will be eaten alive. You would not see darkness as empty space. You would see it as a mouth waiting to swallow the whole world. But the things outside were not the most frightening part. The Vikings feared what stood beyond the edge of firelight: large shadows behind the trees, strange sounds in the mountains, rocks shaped like sleeping giants. From this, they told stories of trolls. Trolls were not cute creatures from children's stories. In the imagination of the North, they were enormous things, stupid, ancient, and dangerous. They lived at the edge of the human world, inside mountain caves, deep in forests, inside the darkness. If you met a troll at night, you did not fight. You ran, because it could crush human bones like dry branches. But trolls had one weakness: light. When the first ray of sunlight touched their skin, they turned to stone. And maybe that is why the Vikings were not eager to step outside at night. Not because they were cowards, but because in their world, the night did not belong to humans. The night belonged to things older than humans. Then darkness found its way inside the home. You could lock the door. You could light the fire. You could sit close to your family. But there was still one place darkness could always enter: sleep. The Vikings had a name for it: Mara. Mara did not break down doors. It did not roar. It did not drag chains across the floor. It came when you were weakest, when you lay down, when your eyes closed, when your body became still. It crawled into the room, climbed onto the bed, sat on your chest, and pressed down. You woke up, but you could not move. You could not speak. You could not scream. You felt as if an invisible creature was crushing the breath out of you. Today, we call this sleep paralysis, a sleep-related phenomenon, when the brain wakes up, but the body remains frozen. But 1,000 years ago, the Vikings had no word for neuroscience. They only had darkness. And inside that darkness, they gave their fear a name: Mara. From that old image came the word mare in nightmare, a bad dream, which means that even in modern English, A piece of ancient northern darkness is still alive. Every time you say, "I had a nightmare," you are calling the name of an old demon. But ghosts were not what the Vikings feared most. What they feared was not an invisible spirit, not a whisper, not a white shape floating past a doorway. The thing they feared most had a very clear form. It had flesh. It had bones. It had the smell of rot. Draugr. A Draugr was a walking corpse in Norse belief, not like a modern zombie that only bites. A Draugr was a dead person who carried greed, anger, and hatred back into the world of the living. It was not weak. It was stronger than it had been in life. Its bod,